How would you feel if one of your best friends was a member of a mafia family? Well, the protagonist of this story felt betrayed when his friend became a mafia boss. But that's not all. The story has a lot more twists than you can imagine, so make sure to watch it till the end to know what happens next. But every time he thought he was getting close to making a bust, something would happen that would thwart his efforts. She knew he was working on a big case, but she had no idea that it involved his childhood friend. She demanded that he get his act together, or she was going to leave him. Our protagonist wasted no time and rushed to Michael's house. There was a car parked in the driveway that matched the description of the one the man had given him. He searched the vehicle thoroughly and found the drugs. Our protagonist was sure that this was enough evidence to arrest Michael. She had never imagined that her husband was a cop. Michael's lawyers tried to discredit him, but he held his ground. Before he went to prison, he had given orders for his brother to take over the family business. Now, after Michael's conviction, his brother immediately took control of the family and began planning his revenge against our protagonist. In the end, Michael was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Our protagonist thought that he had finally won, but he had no idea what Michael had planned next. The mafia family was furious to hear that he had escaped. They offered him a noble's ransom for his life, but he refused. On the other hand, he also knew that he was innocent and that he had been framed. In the end, he decided to trust Michael, and the two reunited. Together, they exposed the conspiracy that had framed our protagonist and brought down the entire mafia family. He knew that if he accepted, then his life would be forfeit. Our protagonist finally had his freedom back, and he was able to start a new life with his family. As for Michael, he was returned to prison, where he belonged. She confronted him and demanded answers. He told her everything, and she was shocked. The FBI was closing in on them, and it wouldn't be long before they were all behind bars. Then one day a letter arrived addressed to our protagonist. It was from Michael. In it, he explained that he had escaped from prison and was now back in the city. He begged our protagonist for forgiveness and offered to help him clear his name. She never would have guessed that Michael was the mafia boss she had seen him with. Then they began to target him at work. They planted false evidence that implicated him in a drug deal. When he was sent to investigate it, they made sure that he was caught in the act. Among them was Michael's brother, who was arrested and charged with conspiracy and racketeering. Our protagonist was vindicated, but he knew that the war was not over yet. He'd made powerful enemies, and they would stop at nothing to destroy him. Our protagonist was suspended from the police force, and his reputation was ruined. She was also angry at herself for not being able to protect their children during the raid. But he needed more to bring the entire crime family down. That's when he decided to make a move. He set up a sting operation and arrested several members of Michael's crew. Then he brought them to an abandoned warehouse and interrogated them one by one, but none of them gave him the information he wanted. One night she followed him and saw him meeting with Michael. He had no choice but to go undercover once again and prove his innocence. With the help of a few loyal friends, he gathered evidence against Michael's brother and his associates. He then went to the authorities and presented it to them. They listened and finally agreed to help him. She confronted him. He lied and said that Michael was a low-level criminal who had nothing to do with the mafia. Meanwhile, Michael suspected that someone was working against him. He had our protagonist's house surrounded by his men, ready to storm it and find out who the mole was. When they kicked in the door, they found our protagonist's wife and kids. They were shocked to see that the mole was the cop who had been hunting them for months. Michael had no choice but to let them go. If he had harmed them, our protagonist would have killed him without hesitation. He had a hunch that it was one of his own men, but he couldn't figure out who it was. Every time he thought he had it figured out, our protagonist would do something that would throw him off. For example, whenever he followed Michael, he saw how respectful his men were towards him and how he tried to keep them out of trouble. At one point, Michael even saved one of his men from being beaten up by the police. Our protagonist couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had always thought of Michael as a cold-hearted killer, but now he was starting to see another side to him. Our protagonist is the son of a respected police officer in New York City who was killed in the line of duty. Our protagonist grew up with his father's killer, Michael, whose parents were mafia bosses. They grew up together and went to school together. One day he got a tip that Michael had become the new boss of the Lucchese crime family. The family was so powerful that even the police commissioner was afraid of them. Commissioner asked our protagonist to gather evidence against Michael so the authorities could finally put him behind bars. Our protagonist was heartbroken to learn that his childhood friend had become a mafia boss, but he knew it was his duty to bring Michael down. In fact, they were such good friends that there was nothing our protagonist did and know about Michael and vice versa. However, when the time came for them to choose their life paths, they made very different decisions. Michael joined the mafia while our protagonist decided to join the police force like his late father. As years passed by, our protagonist worked his way up the ladder and became an undercover narcotics detective. He began following Michael and his associates, listening in on their conversations, and gathering any information he could. Meanwhile, our protagonist's wife was growing suspicious of his activities. Months passed and our protagonist was getting frustrated. He had nothing on Michael, and his wife was beginning to suspect that he was in too deep with the mob. He was just about to give up when one of the men confessed that Michael had stashed some drugs in a secret compartment in his car. He continued to work undercover, gathering intelligence on the mafia family. One day, Michael decided to take matters into his own hands. The shootout that ensued left several of Michael's men dead. Our protagonist's wife was traumatized by the incident. After the incident, our protagonist was forced to testify against Michael in court. Michael had known that he was going to jail for a long time, so he had already made arrangements for what would happen next. They started by sending threatening letters to our protagonist and his family. He was desperate to clear his name, but nobody believed him. A massive police presence descended on the city as they began rounding up the suspects, so he decided to disappear. He faked his own death and went into hiding. Years passed and the heat on the mafia family intensified. Our protagonist was torn. On one hand, he knew that Michael was dangerous and that he had hurt a lot of people. In the end, justice was served and the city was a safer place.